This conference will now be recorded.
Hello, everyone. Welcome back to our podcast series that's focused on the public sector, Fed, as well as local law enforcement. Joseph Tarpley, former law enforcement professional, who's now financial advisor, joins us again. Joseph, thanks for taking the time today.
Yes, sir. Thank you for having me.
All right, so today we're going to talk about the supplement benefit. I think it gets confusing for a lot of people, but there's mandatory retirement for certain law enforcement, and let's talk about a couple things. What's the supplement, and then can you get into the eligibility part of that?
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. The way the law enforcement, excuse me, law enforcement branch of the federal government was designed, it was to ensure that they had young and vigorous, young and vigorous core of officers, and that's exactly what it says from the OPM. And so when we say that we have mandatory retirement ages, and so with law enforcement personnel, because due to the strenuous nature of the job and the hazards, federal government says that there has to be that individuals have to retire at 57 years old. Sometimes there can be made exceptions, but generally across the board, 57 is the max age for retirement. And based on that young and vigorous officers that they want, there's a max age for entry into it. They won't, without major paperwork done, they won't allow anybody in uh, older than 37. They do that so that once you enter at 37, you have your 20 years by 57. With federal law enforcement, you have 20 years after 20 years of service, regardless of uh, I'm sorry, after 20 years of service, you can retire at 50, and after 25, you can retire at any age as long as you have 25 years of service.
Wow.
Yes, yes. So you can potentially have somebody, if you think somebody 20 years old that starts working can retire at 45 with their full pension uh, because they have their 25 years of service.
And so then they get a supplement until Social Security kicks in?
Yes, sir. And so the way that works is um, so because you can't take Social Security until you're 62 years old, you can't qualify for that. Excuse me. You have to. The federal government is designed for they call either an annuity supplement or the FERS supplement, and it is basically to supplement your income that you should receive from Social Security, but are uneligible to.
And I can see where that could be confusing.
Yes, sir.
So
Yes, sir. It can.
do you have the ability, if somebody's out there, I'm just putting myself in their position, and they're like, oh, I'm going to retire, at 50. Do you have the ability to show them what that supplement's going to look like for planning
Yes,
purposes?
yes, I can. We definitely have the ability to show it um, for a person uh, who would be interested in retiring. Obviously, it would at least have to be, the farthest they could go is 57. But somebody at 50, they have several years, 12 years to to live before they get to 62. So with that being said, the way it would work is for an individual who has um, how it's based on how many years of service you've made. Now 20 is the minimum for retirement and to retire at age 50, but whenever they calculate based on your benefit at 62 for Social Security. Now it's not 67. 67 is going to be the full is is going to be your full retirement age, but you can but obviously people can start taking out at 62. And so the way it's set up is based on 40 years of service. And so anything less than that 40 years is calculated against the 40 and creates a percentage that they multiply by the benefit that you would have at 62. And then that's what you receive on your monthly as your supplemental annuity until you reach 62. It has so for instance, if you're supposed to receive $1,000 a month at 62 years old, then you will I'm sorry, if you're supposed to receive at 62, then you'll have if you retire at 50 and say you got 30 years of experience at 50, then what they would do is take 30 and divide it by 40. It gives you 0.75. You multiply by that 1,000, and so your monthly benefit is going to be $750, not $1,000. You have to have 40 years of experience to get the full
Okay,
$1,000.
gotcha,
Which means you'd have to
gotcha.
start working at, pretty much have to start working at 17 with the federal
Yeah,
government to get your full amount at, if you mandatory retirement at 57.
wow. That's a lot of moving parts.
It is.
Now,
It is indeed.
that's why somebody that is out there needs to get with Joseph to walk through what your options are. He can simplify it for you. Now, before we start this session, you mentioned that there are some drawbacks to the supplement.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir, there are. And unfortunately, with you would believe if you worked, as hard as you could, especially in something like law enforcement, where it's a very demanding job, that you would have be restricted by certain penalties or certain withholdings that other people would, but you are. And just like individuals at 62, when you can't when you get Social Security, you can only make if you decided to work. Let me say with that, if you make more than $18,240 a year, then they're going to withhold $1 for every $2 you make over that. So if you make $19,240 in a year, then they're going to withhold uh, $500 from your uh, from your yearly amount that you receive with Social Security. With that being said, that's the way the supplement works as well. The supplemental annuity uh, follows the same guidelines as Social Security when it comes to those withholdings. Any money made between in that above that bracket after $48,600 a year, they withhold $1 for every $3 you make. So
Jeez.
um, so for individuals, and I know several retired federal law enforcement officers who have went into private investigations and things like that, working as contractors for like with Homeland Security process called EQUIP, and EQUIP's a background check for their for individuals. It's a 7 year, it goes back 7 years, and so those individuals go work as contractors. Well, if you retired at 50, I mean, most people aren't ready to just call it quits and just sit at the home and watch the Price is Right. Um, so a lot of times people will want to work, but if you do work now, your FERS pension is not going to affect that, or SERS. Neither one of your pensions is going to affect that amount of money. It doesn't contribute to the $18,260. But that being said, if you do, if you want to try to, make more money, especially if you have, or if you go outside of law enforcement into something that ends up, selling things or whatever being more lucrative, and you make more than that, you will take a withholding for that, and they hold that money until you reach your full retirement age, which is 67. Well, 67 for individuals born after 1960.
Wow. You got the knowledge on this stuff, don't you?
Well, I gotta stay on top of everything. When if you If you don't try to stay in the lead, then you fall behind, is what they say.
Yeah, well, that's why, that's why Joseph focuses on law enforcement. And if you've heard other podcasts that I've done, I'm a big advocate of working with a financial professional that understands um, your culture, your occupation, and that leads to special provisions like we've talked about here with employer. So those of you that are viewing this session on YouTube, you see Joseph's LinkedIn channel. Follow him on LinkedIn. You can also submit questions to Joseph on fedchecklist.com. Go to fedchecklist.com. You can download a really nice complimentary PDF of what you need to be prepared for at retirement, along with a worksheet and budget. And you can also put questions or comments in there regarding this session. I'll hand out to everybody here our 800 number, 888-545-8840. Once again, it's 888-545-8840. And let us know that you attended Law Enforcement Podcast, you'd like more information. And Joseph, what are we going to be talking about next week?
Well, what I'd like to try to discuss is getting into some of the individuals who are most people consider law enforcement, but are not necessarily considered law enforcement due to their retirement, and how that affects how they'll be affected by not taking, not having the enhanced benefit.
So that episode's going to be next week, and some of you may fall into that category. That's an important session, so make sure you join us next week. Look for that upload shortly. And Joseph, as usual, thank you very much. Great information today.
Yes, sir. Thank you. I appreciate you having me, Jeff.
We'll talk to you next week. This concludes our session, everybody. Thank you.